At IdahoSports.com, we've got you covered 6 ways from Sunday when it comes to high school sports. But what about BSU, ISU, U of I, C of I, CSI?
I think the big headlines, because a lot of people talk about Boise State, but it's the quarterback battle. And what's your take, Lucas, on that quarterback battle?
I think it's, what do you want? You want the floor or the ceiling?
Have no fear, the Fighting Taters are here.
The thing I love about the Cody Hawkins hire is that he's an Idaho guy. He's a Bishop Kelly graduate. Dad coached at Boise State. So I think this is one of the first hires ISU has had in a long time where he can go into these recruiting situations and say, I am Idaho. I get Idaho. Come play for Idaho State.
Each week, Ryan Luke and Lucas Gebhart will break down the biggest stories at the next level and beyond.
With Coach Eck getting that extension, it's a huge get. That's a huge get for University of Idaho. I mean, we've seen what he can do.
It's the Fighting Taters Show on IdahoSports.com.
That's right. This is episode 1 of the Fighting Taters Show. My name is Lucas Gebhart. That guy right there is Ryan Luke. Ryan, you and I, we've done a number of broadcasts together. We've talked about doing something like this now for a couple years. And here we go. We landed on a name, the Fighting Taters Show. Very Idaho of us, I know. So here we go. This is episode 1. This show is going to be a lot of fun, and we're looking forward to it. Here's basically what we're going to do. We're going to throw up something that looks like this. So in the biz, we call this thing a rundown, right, Ryan? So this is roughly what we're going to – yeah, right. This is roughly what we're going to touch on today with the Olympics going on right now. We definitely want to touch on that, and Idaho ties to this. And we'll get in a little bit about what our vision of the show is, but this should give you a pretty good idea. We'll touch on Boise State football, U of I football, Idaho State football, College of Idaho, a little bit of high school recruiting, as well as we head into high school football season now, just a couple weeks away. It'll be here before we know it, and then wrap up the show. And we plan to put probably one of these out every week in the month of August. And as we go into football season, obviously football will be the main focus of this thing as we go along. But we do want to cover anything that's kind of beyond Idaho high school sports. So what are these athletes who competed in high school here in the state of Idaho? We've seen them come through Idaho sports. We do a great job covering that. But what are they doing after they leave and beyond, and when they're playing collegiately or professionally? That's kind of the focus of this show, and why we ended up on this Fighting Taters name. So
anybody who comes through Idaho or has Idaho ties or has roots here for any reason, played college ball here, we want to give them a shining moment, because everybody does it for their own state. Everybody does. And we wanted to make sure that we were able to give a spotlight to these guys. But on top of that, you and I, Lucas, we have had so much fun at breaks. We chat, we talk sports all the time. We don't stop talking sports. And I think that now this is a little bit loose, off script, and we can have a good time bringing our opinions about some of these subjects that you and I typically don't get an opportunity, to present to the World Wide Web. And now we get to do that. And, for just full transparency, I'm not a homer. None of these teams, Boise State, Idaho, none of them. So I'm going to give my full transparent opinion about every single one of these. And I have no ties to them. I didn't go to school at any of them. I am from Idaho, from Eastern Idaho originally. Shelley, if you're listening, did not go to high school there. Ended up going to high school in Utah. But made my way back to the Gem State as soon as possible, as work permitted, as I grew up and started going gray, then you come back to the situation. But you, on the other hand, you have some ties to Idaho via college.
Yeah, I do. I went to Idaho State. I was born and raised in Fort Collins, Colorado, about an hour north of Denver, home where Colorado State is. So my dad and I had season tickets to Colorado State football growing up. So I kind of outdate Boise State, if you will, with the Mountain West. I've watched Mountain West football my whole life. And then when I went to college, I jumped on the school paper there at Idaho State, the Bengal. That was kind of where I got my start in sports journalism. I was covering the football team, men's basketball, covered some softball stuff, and then ended up going on to be the sports editor of the school paper for a couple of years. So that was when I really kind of got my feet wet in the Big Sky in Idaho State, and once I graduated, I moved over to Boise, to the Treasure Valley. I've done a little bit of work for the Statesman. I worked at a NBC affiliate here in the Treasure Valley for a couple of years as well. So now I'm kind of beyond those full-time media days, and who knows where this will lead to, but this is kind of the part-time gig thing. I have a full-time job with Visit Boise, where I work full-time trying to bring sports tournaments and events to Boise as well. So definitely in the world of sports, especially here in Idaho. So and then you and I mean, we've done games for, this will be year three,
Yeah.
I think. Yeah.
Three.
Yeah. And we kind of got the idea just from doing halftime shows together. These were like mini podcasts, essentially. So.
Well, and what we did, remember, we sat outside the famous Idaho Potato Bowl. We set up a camera and said, let's just talk. And I think that was kind of the, hey, there's something to this, because look, both of us know how to not shut up. We can open our mouths and go forever if it's sports related, and just having just the history of sports. Now, you've heard the terminology before, where you've heard the term that you have to practice something for 10,000 hours to be an expert at it. Well, I'm well beyond 10,000 hours in sports. Like my family are just like, dude, you've got to back off a little bit. So hopefully that 10,000 hours translates and brings good content, to the show. But just quick background on me. Again, I was born in Eastern Idaho, but then ended up going to high school in Utah. I played all sports. When I say all sports, I legitimately, when you kind of go to it was 3A out of 5As. I played football, basketball, and then baseball. I did track. I played soccer for a year, but then ended up going to college. I was going down to Southern Utah University. I was going to play football down there, and kind of got derailed a little bit. Some stuff happened, injuries, etc., and ended up not seeing a lot of time on the field. So that was the glory of my college sports days. But since then, spent a lot of time around it, a lot of friends and competitive athletes that have done that. But more than anything, I'm just a fan. Right. I'm a big fan. Fans can be good at what they do as well. And since I now have a couple of kids and I'm deeply embedded in the Treasure Valley baseball scene, who knew that would be coming on? But, we want to talk baseball. Let's go. But anyway, so that's my background, and that's where I come from. I have been broadcasting. I broadcast a lot down in Utah, some of the big 6A football teams down in Utah. I've done a lot of work for the College of Idaho, broadcast for them, and then obviously Idaho Sports, man. That's our bread and butter. We do those good high school games. You and I have done 2 football state championships, done some basketball state championships. It's fantastic, man. And great sports. I'll tell you what, if you don't know, Idaho is incredibly supportive. They show up, they turn out to games, practices, etc., and you get that hometown feel still, and you see it at the Boise State level. College of Idaho, you go north of Moscow, or you head over to Idaho State, and the fans love, they do it. So great state, great sports state is Idaho.
Yeah, it really is. And, I think as we go along and we start to record some of these shows as well, you and I both have pretty heavy travel schedules in the fall. So there might be, this background may not be the background for some of it might be some hotel rooms and stuff. So, but yeah, we're planning to do this thing weekly, starting out here in August, revving up for football season. Once we get into football season, with the Olympics going on right now, we'll definitely touch on those. But once we get this thing going, it's probably going to be a lot of football coverage going across the state into the fall. And then once we get into basketball season, we'll definitely get into that. And then Ryan will give his take on, Treasure Valley baseball as we get into those as well. So.
Idaho baseball. Let's go Idaho baseball.
Okay, there you go. Yeah.
No, let's jump right in, though. Let's go Idaho athletes in Paris. And, I mean, Olympics are happening. I love the Olympics. In fact, growing up, I remember watching this because NBC always broadcasts them, right? Like, it's the NBC thing. But I remember sitting there and I was watching and I was like, wow. And then all of a sudden, and I didn't really know, I was probably about 8 or so. I could do the math if it's every 4 years, but moral of the story is I remember hearing the national anthem and it just struck me. And then I watched a track and field and I was awestruck. So I love the Olympics, and we have like 10 athletes that have Idaho ties that are currently participating in the Olympics. And it's great. I mean, get out and support them, watch these athletes go at it.
Yeah, and some of these athletes, the ties that they have is through the former gold medalist and probably the most currently known Olympian in Idaho, Kristen Armstrong, who obviously won 3 gold medals. So she's been going out and basically pumping out cyclists through her training. And so that's where some of these come from. But Cherie Hawkins is one person, a Madison High School graduate, ran it at Utah State competing in the women's hep. I mean, she might be, out of all the athletes that have these ties, I think she, coming into the Olympics may have had the best chance at medaling. But Mateo Jorgensen, another one in road cycling, a Boise High alum, right before the Olympics competed in the Tour de France as well, which if you are involved in the cycling world and you know how tough and grueling the Tour de France is, to have to go through that, which is just grueling cycling. You're doing 20, 30, 40, 50 miles, climbs through the French Alps and stuff like that. And then to just come right out after that and into the Olympics is something that's
what's the Tour de France again? I mean, is that maybe popular? I've never heard of it.
Yeah. It's been fun to watch Mateo and his path through cycling, and he's on that pro circuit in Europe. So it's been cool to watch him on the Olympic scene as well. And then Alyssa Mendoza, a women's boxer out of Caldwell, and then Marissa Howard, who ran at Boise State competing in the 3,000-meter steeplechase. She's been in the news the last few years off of her accomplishments as well. So that's kind of the main rundown there for Idaho Ties.
Yeah, and there are plenty more. Go ahead and take a look, and you can just Google who's done what at this point. But we don't want to take up too much more time. But Idahoans in the athletes in Paris right now, and it's such a fun thing. So get on that and support your Idahoans if you can. All right,
and that's always that's going to be fun to been fun watching them through these Olympics so far, and as they wrap those things up in Paris. By the way, did you see Salt Lake? It's getting the Winter Olympics. 2034. 2034, yeah.
Yeah, so that's fantastic.
The last time they hosted that was 2002. This is obviously long before my time in Idaho, but there were a few events leading up to the Olympics that were actually in Idaho. I know there was one. It was a hockey game in downtown Boise. I think it was the U.S. played. I don't know if it was men's or women's. I think it was a women's game, but the women's team played like China or something, and they won. It was like 20-2. It was a rout. But leading into the 2034 Olympics, obviously a long ways away, but I think there's some opportunity there for Idaho to host some events leading into the Olympics where it's an exhibition game or scrimmage or something, team camps, that kind of thing.
Exactly right. They may host them, and they may need fields and not fields, but locations to say practice. But also, if you're in southeastern Idaho, there are going to be some events. I mean, the Super G was held at Snow Basin, which is not that far from south. If you're in Pocatello, Idaho Falls, I mean, you can get down there an hour and a half, probably 2 hours, and you can catch some Olympic events. And so, yeah, it is a few years away, right? It's 2025. So give it 9 years, and 9 years from now, you can go do it. But I'll tell you, the other thing, too, is if you are a parent, you have a kid that's participating in winter sports, and you want them to see the highest level, that'd be the place to take them. And to have them right there, kind of in our backyard, I'm sure I can take my boys. Although 9 years from now, they're not going to be little boys anymore. They're going to be big boys. They can take me when we get to that point.
Yeah. Who knows where I'll be in 9 years? But yeah, it's definitely going to be a trip that we'll be taking down to the Salt Lake as well. So transitioning now into college football, which is going to be here. I can't believe it's already August, but here we are. Seems like the summer kind of flew by, but revving up for kickoff, we'll start with Boise State. The headline for Boise State as we early stages here into camp, revving up for their first game against Georgia Southern. Who's going to be the quarterback? It's something they've talked about for months now. Malachi Nelson, Maddox Madsen, one of those two guys. I think it's going to be one of those things that I don't think we'll know beyond Georgia Southern, but maybe we do. I don't know. But I think they kind of have a game that they feel like they should win, come out the gate, then they go to Eugene. So to me, you're not really getting a feel for what your team has. And then you come to Portland State after that. So to me, I don't think you really know what you're going to have as a team until they play Washington State by the end of September. So maybe they don't even have a decision till then. I don't know.
No, I'm going to tell you right now, it's going to be Malachi Nelson.
Okay.
Yeah, it's going to be Malachi Nelson. I mean, I'm straight up, because for two reasons. Number one, I think we talked about it, you and I, a long time ago, which is the ceiling. I think his ceiling is astronomical, and if he grows into that and he can develop to the quarterback that I think that we've seen bits and pieces, specifically at the high school level, I think, the sky's the limit for Boise State. But number two, and probably most important to future recruiting, is the fact that if they do land a big time recruit, that they get to play. The NIL brought him here. I don't care what anybody says. NIL brought him here and a chance to play.
Might have kept Ashton Genty in town too, but
what's that?
No, might have kept Ashton Genty in town too.
Yeah, good point. Yeah. Absolutely. But by him getting his money and then getting playing time to be on the big stage, he may be a 2-year guy at Boise State to develop into it, and then maybe USC comes calling again. I don't know. Moral of the story is for future big names that want to come to Boise State, they've got to be able to play, because Boise State offers a couple of things. They offer a big enough platform. It's known around the country. The Blue, everybody knows the Blue. And they play a tough enough competition. They're a good enough football team to be able to produce at the high level. I mean, you see NFL guys going out there. And so it's enough. If you succeed at Boise State, you can succeed almost anywhere. I think it's a perfect landing spot and building spot. And that leaves Madsen in no man's land, unfortunately. And, he may be looking into that transfer portal by the end of the season.
Well, they lost Taylor Green to the transfer portal last year too, and I think he ended up in a great situation at Arkansas. Hard to say no to the SEC when the SEC comes calling, but you see up on the graphic there, Boise State number 1. What we mean by that, they're predicted to win the Mountain West for the second year in a row. Bumpy year that they had last year, firing Andy Avalos midway through the year. I believe it was early November. And then they come around and they win the conference. So they fired their coach and they still won the Mountain West and went to a bowl game.
I mean, it's phenomenal. I think that is a testament to the depth and the coaching staff, the rest of the coaching staff, to keep it together, to do that. I came across NevadaSportsnet.com. I have my phone because I'm looking at it. But they put together kind of this tally since 2013, the current iteration of the Mountain West, when Utah State and San Jose State came on board. And they said along all those years, if you won the Mountain West or you finished number 1, you got 12 points, then 11, 10, 9, all the way down to 1. And they did an aggregate over the course of all those years. And Boise State, by a landslide, 128 points. They have 4 titles and 3 runner-ups. That means 7 out of the 10 years that it's been around, they were playing for the championship. San Diego State was number 2 with 2 titles and 1 runner-up, but Fresno State was number 3 with 3 titles and 2 runner-ups, and then obviously finished lower than that. Rounding it out was Utah State 4, Air Force 5, Wyoming 6, Colorado State 7, San Jose State 8, Nevada 9, Hawaii 10, UNLV 11, and New Mexico was at the bottom at number 12. And I think that just goes to show, I mean, the program was built. It's been sustained. I mean, there's been some bumpy roads. And like you said, coach is gone. Doesn't matter. We're still going to win a conference championship.
Yeah, that's the thing that's always stood out to me. Again, just talked to earlier, I grew up watching Colorado State football where 8-4 is a great year. In 4
year. Phenomenal year.
6-6 is a good year. In 4, 6-6 get your coach extended in 4 columns. 6-6.
You go bowling, baby. You go bowling.
Yeah, right. It's 6-6 here gets you on the hot seat at Boise State. But that's just kind of been the way the Broncos have been for decades now. And looking at the Mountain West preseason polls and the media days they just had a few weeks ago or whatever that was down in Vegas. Boise State got 38 first place votes in the preseason poll. The next closest is, there's 2 of them. UNLV and Fresno State each got 4. A heavy favorite to win the conference.
Yeah.
So Boise State obviously heavily favored to not only win the conference, but they have a thing up in their locker room that says their goal every year is to win the Mountain West and win a bowl game. I don't think that's it. I think this year they got their eyes on the playoff, college football playoff, to be a playoff. I think that's their goal at the end of the year. But who knows? They got to have a good showing in Eugene if they're going to think that big.
Yeah. Well,
they can't go to Eugene and get beat by 40. You got to at least be in that game.
That's right. Keep it close. No one's expecting you to win, but you got to keep it close. When I say close, a couple touchdowns, because especially with that firepower, Dylan Gabriel transferring from Oklahoma, coming up to Oregon, just brings 18 years of college experience and, just incredible in terms of accolades there. But you got to keep it close. And defensively, that's the keep everything in front of you kind of defense.
Yeah. So we'll get a little bit more to them in a future episode. I think our plan is to really kind of dive into each one of these teams that we have on this rundown here with a specific episode to each one. So we'll have a Boise State episode, we'll have an Idaho episode, we'll have an Idaho State episode, College of Idaho. We're really going to cover recruiting pretty well in high school football. We'll talk about that in a sec. But let's go over to the University of Idaho, a team that they had a great year last year. Quarterfinals in the Big Sky. They're picked to finish third in the Big Sky this year. They lost to Albany in the quarterfinals of the FCS playoffs last year. This is year 3 of Jason Eck, but boy, did they lose a ton of guys, not only to graduation, but the transfer portal. They lost their 2 best receivers who are both in NFL camps right now. Hatton is their stud receiver. He's in a camp with Seattle. Jeremy Jackson is in a camp with New Orleans. They lost their quarterback to Oregon State. They lost their running back to Utah. So U of I has definitely got some holes to fill on the offensive side of things. But looking at some of their preseason stuff, their head coach Jason Eck thinks that they could have one of the best defenses in the conference this year. And the old saying is defense travels, right? But the Big Sky loaded once again this year with Montana. Going to the championship game last year, losing to South Dakota State. But Big Sky, the preseason media, they think it's going to be Montana State, then Idaho. So they're picked to finish third in this one. But, I think Idaho is going to be really good once again going into this year.
Idaho is going to be a tough out. And, yes, they lose everybody. They don't have a single senior on the offensive side of the ball.
Yeah.
They don't have a single senior. It's unbelievable that they're playing this with basically a fresh set. Now, granted, they got some freshman guys. They got some, some freshmen and some sophomores got a lot of playing time last year. But the point is when you come in, and that is a testament to the scheme. Coach Eck, the way that he runs things, it's a plug and play at this point. And I think being honest with ourselves, if you're at the FCS level, with the exception of some outliers, like I'd say Montana, and Montana State has built into that, where North Dakota State, and South Dakota, those probably 5 schools, maybe a couple back east, those are destination. They recruit, they get people there. They want to go there for the reason. And I think Idaho is fast becoming that type of school where you do get somebody in that wants to be there. But you see what happens when you have success at a high level, at an FCS level. What happens is you get some money waved in front of you, and you go play at an FBS school and take a shot at the NFL, and that's what's happening. But Coach Eck, and this is here's the cool thing, is it happens to everybody. So it
means you're doing something right in today's college football. When your quarterback's going from FCS up to, what was Pac-12, but I guess still is technically Pac-12 with Oregon State. Another one's Pac-2, and then your running back's going to Big 12, and then you have 2 receivers that are going to be in NFL camps this year. That's
doing something right.
Kind of the recipe.
Yeah. Absolutely. And productive, highly productive, all of them. And I think that's critical. That's going to be the success for Idaho the remainder of the year or throughout the year is how much can they produce, yards per carry, those types of things, because they're going to get hit in the mouth with a couple of big time, they're going to play some big time programs and they're going to play some teams, Montana State, but can they continue to be productive game in and game out?
Yeah. August 31st, they open at Oregon. This is their schedule: at Oregon, at Wyoming, Albany, who they played in the playoffs last year. That's going to be at the KB Dome. At Abilene Christian, at UC Davis, which won't be an easy game. Davis is supposed to be pretty good this year. Northern Arizona, they go to Montana State, but that's going to be on ESPN2. That's great exposure for Idaho in the Big Sky. So host Cal Poly, host Eastern, go to Portland State, host Weber, and then finish the year at Idaho State. So Big Sky's tough. That's a good league. Big Sky's deep.
SEC of FCS. How's that?
Yeah. I would agree with that. So But U of I mean, just looking at their preseason stuff, they're excited about the defense and a lot of young pieces on offense. And but their quarterback coming into this year, Jack Lane, stuff that I'm seeing says he was in contention to win the starting job when he was a freshman. Or Giamatti McCoy is the Oregon State guy that transfer now. So I mean, he's supposedly the real deal. Never seen him play, so we'll have to see. But from what I'm seeing is, Jack Lane is a redshirt sophomore now. They may not miss a beat on offense with him.
Yeah, absolutely, and that one is going to continue to play out in the program they built. But we got to bump up. Let's move on. Let's talk Idaho State now. You're alum. My dad went to Idaho State, so I guess we can count that as well. But
okay, all right.
Yeah,
got some Pokey blood here. Yeah.
He went to pharmacy school at Idaho State. So anyway, Coach Hawkins, we talk about it. You and I talked about it. We think Cody Hawkins is a great hire. He's building a culture. He's building a program there. He's starting to get a couple kids. We see some of the Treasure Valley kids that are going there. They open camp on the 31st as well. And anyway, they're doing great things. But I think the big headline from a couple weeks ago, a week and a half ago, all of a sudden Hawkins Sr. is back coaching football in the state of Idaho. What's that all about?
Yeah. I mean, it's you look at it, and I read an article out of the ISJ when this came out. So Dad Dan is the lowest paid coach on the coaching staff. He's making about $19K a year, which is nothing compared to what he was probably making when he was at Colorado. So, I mean, to me, it kind of seems like this is a job that's easing him into retirement. Essentially, is kind of what it looks like on the face. But nevertheless, a cool story. And, dad and son reunited once again. Remember when Dan Hawkins was at Colorado, Cody Hawkins was his quarterback for a little bit. So now they're back together. And, I mean, that's a cool thing for both of them. I've loved everything that Cody Hawkins has done so far at ISU. And bringing Dan on, I think can only help. Because remember, Cody, this is his first head coaching job. And now bring on his dad and I would assume mentor probably as well. To kind of help him guide through, years 2 and 3. I don't think it can hurt, especially for that price tag. I mean, it's not like you're paying him top dollar. I mean,
you made a great point. You said mentor, and just think about how many times, like, hey, Dad, in this situation, this is going on. He could be like, hey, I've seen this 13 times, and this is how I dealt with it. Or on top of that, and we're talking a great offensive mind too, a good football mind in Dan Hawkins, and he has all kinds of knowledge. And so to be able to kind of like suck that off and bring that into the Idaho State program. But here's the other thing that I think is probably what we haven't talked about at all, but it's the professionalism and establishing the legitimacy of the Idaho State football program. What does that mean? Yeah. That means when you walk in, are people flipping towels and having a good time? Or is there a sense of like, hey, we're in this. We're going to win football games. Coach Eck has done that at Idaho. He did that. And you look now, and Idaho State needs the same type of element where you come in and it's a professional locker room, and you're coming in and you have an opportunity to be in every game, and you can pitch a recruit and you can say, hey, listen, you're not going to play in cold weather because this is Idaho, by the way. This is Pocatello, but you're going to
play in a dome. So
they do play exactly. So you're going to be playing in ideal conditions. And by the way, we're investing money. And the AD is doing some great things over there. Like the school is on the rise. Oh, and by the way, we have Dan Hawkins, who's seen success in multiple places and done a lot of really good things. And his network is probably massive. It probably spans into the NFL. Those are the types of things that help recruit kids and get them to want to come to Idaho State.
Yeah, I totally agree with everything you just said. And I think just having the presence of a guy like Dan Hawkins in the locker room, I mean, come on. I mean, and you got to remember, this is a program in Idaho State that's, we just talked a few minutes ago about good year at Colorado State, 6-6. Good year at Idaho State, the better part of the last few decades has been 3-4 wins.
Yeah.
Like they've had a couple years here and there where they've popped, and they had a good year. It was the year before my freshman year, so I would have been 14. Where they were a couple plays away from potentially being a playoff team. But Idaho State, I mean, they haven't made the playoffs since they won the national championship.
Merrill Hodge.
Yeah, right. And that's the last time that this school has made the playoffs. So the expectations just haven't really been there for decades, essentially. So I think that's the thing that I love that I'm seeing out of Idaho State the most is you bring in a coach that is raising that expectation. You have an athletic director who I think has been doing that over the better part of the last few years. And they just got a deal done to returf their softball field. Mm-hmm. So I can't remember what company it was. It was a communications company or something in town. But they're basically, they secured that partnership, sponsorship, whatever you want to call it, to returf their softball field. So now you couple that with renovations that they're doing at Holt Arena, a very long-term project that they've had for years in Pocatello is how do we get a basketball arena built? And it just seems like things are starting to happen. They redid Davis Field not too long ago, which is where track and field and soccer play. So they're doing these things that they need to do to win the recruits over. But, to me, it's improving the overall image of the university, which is something that I think athletically they've struggled with over the last, who knows how long now. But you're a recruit and you're like, you have an offer from Idaho, you have an offer from Idaho State. Not many of them have taken the Idaho State offer, but I think that's kind of what that's leading to is Hawkins, the athletic department, they're raising that a little bit more now to where I think they're getting a little more competitive in that statewide race.
Yeah, agreed. Agreed. Moving on quickly, College of Idaho, and this is actually probably the most successful football team in the state of Idaho that nobody knows about. So College of Idaho over in Caldwell, and they were one play away from being national champions last year. Now, you have to remember, they were national champions not this past basketball season, but the season before. They made a run at it, and then they were in the semifinals again in the Final Four for basketball. And then in football, they took it. They were just a phenomenal, high-powered offense, and they took it all the way. And that was all basically on the back of a lot of really good players. But as the quarterback, Andy Peters, as he went, a former Timberline guy, so did that. And they got great news at the end of the season that Andy Peters was going to be coming back. And so that's a big one for the College of Idaho Yotes. And they play good football. And if you're in the Treasure Valley and you want to see an alternative to maybe Boise State and watch some good football and the way they do it, I would say go over to Caldwell and catch one of those games. But the big news coming out of Caldwell is Andy Peters coming back, rolling it out for the super senior year.
Yeah, and that's huge with Peters coming back for, having that experience and having them go on that run and then having a leader like him back. In College of Idaho, 10-3 last year, including the playoff loss. So they were, 10-2 going into their loss in the playoffs. So having a guy like him back, I mean, that's got to do so much. We talk about what it's doing for your locker rooms at Idaho State for the Hawkins guys, and having a guy like Peters, your senior leader, and your quarterback back has got to certainly help for CFI.
Yeah, we'll touch more on College of Idaho later because that's a subject that is very isolated. You got to know College of Idaho to understand what we're talking about. So
I'll tell you what, though, they have a following, though.
Oh boy,
especially out here. I mean, it's probably one of the more loyal followings, I think, maybe statewide. Yeah, I mean, they pay attention.
Oh, you see that logo and they're Yote, man. Everybody's all in on the Yotes, and very small school enrollment's about 1,100, maybe 1,200 tops, 1,100, and very student athlete centric. The soccer team helps with the football games, and the football players help with this and that, and they all just kind of do it for each other. And so it's a very athletic school because pretty much everybody participates in something at the College of Idaho.
Yeah. Well, yeah, I mean, with a school of 1,100 kids, and they have 20-something. They have like over 20 sports too. So it's like pretty much everyone who goes there plays the sport pretty much.
Absolutely. Well, let's hit on recruiting real quick. And so we wrapped up. When I say we, I would say the Idaho wrapped up, and there are a lot of commits. People going from the state of Idaho, some of the bigger names going to some bigger schools back and forth. Boise State had 21 commits, and they had an average of 84.81, and this is off 24/7 sports off their rating system. So their total points were 181. So they had the number one recruiting class in the Mountain West Conference, and I think that shows. And again, that's a testament to their success and how well they do is being able to bring in some of these recruits. And these, they had one 4-star recruit. They had 19 3-star recruits. 4-stars don't go. It's tough to get a 4-star, and they're able to land those guys.
They had a 5-star for a second, right? With
Did we
Gallon
ever? Did we ever think that he was really going to Boise State?
I was surprised when they announced it. And then, as soon as Avalos left, his decommitment shortly followed, as I think most people expected. So, but yeah, I mean, Gallon Bear on his way to Oregon, that's probably one of the top recruits to ever come out of Idaho. And certainly since I've been here, which is, nearly a decade now. But I mean, I'm looking at it off of 24/7 Sports here. We had, let's see, 11 3-stars or higher last year off of how 24/7 Sports rates guys. So obviously led by Gatlin Bear, but Rakeem Johnson, one of the top defenders out of Idaho, a Bishop Kelly guy, Michigan State, Trevor McKenna, a Bora guy staying home at Boise State. Luke Flowers, a guy that you and I both saw a lot the last few years, a Rigby quarterback. He's going to Montana, rated as a 3-star recruit. So Martin Connington, a kicker from Mountain View, he's going to Michigan State. And then Tyler Kinsman, a punter out of Skyview, also going to Oregon. So in the last, 2 years, there's been 3 Idaho kids that have gone to Oregon, because you have Kenyon Sadiq over there right now too, who's out of Idaho Falls. Or Skyview, sorry. Well, yeah, in Idaho Falls, you know what I meant.
Yeah, word on the street is, I know what you mean. Word on the street is that he's going to be getting some playing time too this year, because they really liked him in camp, and they like him in camp, and so. But yeah, Idaho is coming up with some big, and I think we'll have one of the 24/7 Sports guys on the show eventually to do an interview. But just the level of play in the state of Idaho is elevated, and we're starting to see some big time recruits coming out of here. Not a lot, but we're starting to see more. But what you do see is a lot of just, hey, solid 3-star guys that go in and they're going to fill a slot. I think Rakeem Johnson, quite frankly, has the potential to be one of the best recruits coming out of the state of Idaho this year. Gatlin Bear, obviously, he's on the LDS mission right now, so we're not going to see him for a little while. And Luke Flowers is not going to be the starting quarterback in Montana, up in Missoula right now. So I'd say immediately you're going to see some Rakeem Johnson. There were talks of him maybe playing some on the defensive side of the ball. Incredibly athletic, by the way. He broke the state shot put record in just this past year, just about a month, 2 months ago. And so they like him all over the trenches, both sides of the ball.
I think it really fits the Big Ten style of defense. I mean, just big, athletic, strong kid. When we had a couple Bishop Keller games last year, it just seemed like he was always on the ball. He seemed like he was in every tackle. So, yeah, I'm excited to see what he does. I agree with you. I think he's probably going to make, out of last year's recruiting class, the most noise. I think the kid that's going to make the most out of the last few classes, I think, is Kenyon Sadiq out of Oregon. That's a kid that I'm really excited. I mean, he caught a touchdown in their bowl game last year. So
yeah. Well, hey, don't rule out Nate Reynolds, right? The big linebacker from Meridian. He's moved into the starting slot, middle starting linebacker spot for Idaho State. He's going to continue rolling on that, and we'll see what he does. Just really quickly now from this year, so rolling, this will be their senior year. Caden Kimball Turner is the #1 recruit as of right now. He's an athlete from Rocky Mountain High School, and then Isaiah Reed, again, another athlete from Rocky Mountain. But Shepard Fish, he's a big edge rusher, and we did a Capital game, and I saw him, and he's a big kid, and he moves well. He's being recruited heavily by Idaho. And then Dallin Grimes, the offensive tackle out of Middleton, committed to Boise State. He is on track as of right now, may serve a 2-year LDS mission, so they won't see him for a little while. But Mason Cron, Kai Wheeler, Zeke Martinez, that rounds out your top 7 as of right now, and that list will grow as we get in through the rest of the season. We'll start talking on where those kids end up going. But it's fun. Like I said, we have opportunity now, and I think that football has never been bigger in the state of Idaho.
Yeah, I agree with you. Yeah, as the state grows, obviously you have more athletes, more opportunities, things like that. But the last few years and basketball too, which we'll talk about when that time comes. Football's turn right now, but yeah, once basketball hits, I mean, there's several kids that have come through Idaho that are now playing at big time programs and playing minutes as well. Blake Buchanan is a guy that comes to mind, right?
Yep.
Played at Virginia. Virginia's been one of the top programs in the country for the last few years, going to NCAA tournaments and stuff. But yeah, quickly, one last thought on looking at recruits that have come out and where they are now. Lan Larson, running back out of Valley View, and wrapping this up with Big Sky Talk. He's a Valley View kid, running back, rushed for over 1,100 yards last year, was the preseason offensive player of the year in the Big Sky. So he could be one of not only the best players in the Big Sky this year, and he's a running back at UC Davis. He could be one of the best running backs in FCS this year. That's another kid that excited to see where and keep track of him this year as well. So definitely wanted to touch on that. But we're going to talk about all of this in depth more later this month. Boise State, Absolutely. U of I, ISU, College of Idaho, high school recruiting, Olympics, all of it. The goal of this show is to talk about where Idaho kids are after they leave Idaho, basically.
High school.
High school.
After they leave high school in Idaho, right. Yeah.
Yep. But sometimes they still are in Idaho. So.
Yeah, well, and or if they come play college sports here, let's talk about them as well,
Yeah, right. So, I mean, that about does it here for our first episode of the Fighting Tater show. Ryan, any final thoughts?
Final thoughts. I am thrilled with the opportunity to be able to just gab away about sports and have a captive audience because nobody can interrupt me.
Right.
But on top of that, no, I hope that I truly want to bring good insights, and we are going to bring people onto the show. We're going to have interviews, and we're going to have some subject matter experts from all the major teams here in the universities, and we're going to try to extend beyond that. So we look forward to inviting people to interviews and having them on the show. I think it's going to be a great time, and as the show grows, man, spread the word.
Yeah, definitely spread the word. And as we pump these things out, definitely like it, share it. However you listen to your podcast, tell your friends about it, tell your dog about it, tell everyone that you know about the Fighting Tater show. We're excited about it. So until next time, we'll see you then. He's Ryan Luke. I'm Lucas Gebhart. Fighting Tater show, episode 1 in the books.